What we were trying to figure out is whether TikTok, more so than Instagram or YouTube, which are American-owned companies, had more of a bias towards pro-CCP or Chinese Communist Party content, or more of a bias of suppressing anti-CCP content. And so we did find that. We found that searches on TikTok on 4 topics that are sensitive to CCP agenda, Tiananmen Square, Tibet, the Uyghurs, and the region in which the Uyghurs live, Xinjiang. Those 4 search terms on TikTok yielded less content that showed China in a negative light and more content that is potentially favorable to the CCP, things like travel videos, sort of innocuous things like come to Tiananmen Square, there's nothing happening to the Uyghurs, things like that. Those kinds of videos were more prevalent on TikTok than on Instagram or YouTube.
Could it be that there's just less negative content on TikTok?
Less negative content. We didn't search specifically for that in the report itself, but based on previous research with TikTok and even just anecdotal kind of scrolling on TikTok, it's pretty, I would not be surprised to find that that is not the case. It's not just negative content overall that's not there, but this is specifically related to these 4 topics that are sensitive to the CCP.
It's purposeful, algorithmic.
It's like an algorithmic bias.
That seems to be the case. We obviously don't have access to TikTok's algorithm or like the back end of what TikTok does. Nobody really knows what's going on any site, really. I mean, every algorithm is kind of secretive. But based on the research that we did, it seems, that there's something going on. We also compared the engagement levels on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, and engagements that are common between all 3 platforms would be likes and comments. And so we found, especially on TikTok, but on YouTube as well, more so than on Instagram, for instance, that despite the fact that there were more likes and comments on content that is anti-CCP, TikTok still showed almost 3 times as much pro-CCP content, even though engagement levels would suggest, the more likes and comments a video gets, the more likely it should be that video would show up in a search. But that was not the case with TikTok and with YouTube as well.
I think it's interesting because these social media platforms, they say, the algorithm, like you said, is basically a black box, but they say, engagement is what gets videos to the top. Like that's what they want to.
And if you aren't performing well, it's your fault for not making good content.
Right. Well, that's what YouTube said to us. But I think on TikTok, you quoted something when you were in your report, right? What does TikTok say drives their video engagement?
Viewership, you mean?
The viewership, yes. What is the engagement that they say drives their viewership?
Actually, you guys did. I watched your video from 2 days ago that kind of went deeper into our report. I was actually pleasantly surprised. And it's just nice to see that our research is being read by people. I mean, yes, so TikTok, there were internal company documents that were leaked in 2021. So they say that their algorithm, TikTok's algorithm, is built around 4 main goals: user value, long-term user value, creator value, and platform value. That's what they say. These obviously are very vague terms. It's nothing as concrete as like how many likes a video gets. So that's what they told us. Well, at least that's what their internal documents can inform us about what their algorithm is trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as a user of YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, you're assumption on the algorithm. Like what is when you think about what is a fair algorithm, right? It's either some kind of like equally distributed thing, but of course it's not. Or there's some kind of like free market rules, right? Where if you follow the rules of that free market, the assumption that they're going to, if they say engagement drives views, then if you follow the rule and get engagement, then your video will be more successful. But in fact, what your data shows from your report is that is a lie. That they, in fact, when it comes to CCP content, if it's pro-CCP, there's a rather substantial artificial boost to that content and a substantial suppression of anti-CCP content.
Right. Yes. That is what it looks like based on the content and the engagement sort of ratios that we analyzed. It would be interesting, I think, to compare so we compared it pro to anti-CCP content. It would be interesting maybe to compare that to neutral content or irrelevant content, just to see if the same thing is happening for that type of content. If like something is being suppressed for another reason. Like, I mean, it could be any number of reasons they would be interested in suppressing something or promoting something. We obviously don't know what's going on in their minds when they do this. So that would be an interesting future direction, I think.
Right. I think that, you bring up neutral content which would be the way you frame it would be like travel videos and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that that's also one of those things that's a little bit scary, because if you were like, if you had American media companies doing travel reports about Germany in 1938, like, look at what a beautiful country. We're not talking about politics, but it's a great place. Go, as a tourist, I've had a lot of fun. And it's a great, wonderful, safe place. No politics. There's still like something going on there that doesn't feel quite right. Right. So
right.
Yeah, the obvious comparison is the Xinjiang travel videos where it's,
right.
No genocide in this video.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful, delicious looking food and people who were
happy dancing Uyghurs.
They're happy.
Yeah. We came across a lot of videos like that. And they, our coders had a time figuring out what was pro, what was anti, what was neutral and irrelevant. Yeah, it's sometimes hard to tell what could be construed as pro-CCP if you're showing how wonderful things are in a place where they're not so wonderful.
Yeah, it's really interesting because looking at that kind of content on YouTube, like a search for Xinjiang on YouTube is pretty obvious that there's been a flood of information that's supported by the Chinese state. Not just state-run media, like reports about Xinjiang and things like that, but also some of these travel vloggers that seem to be like, oh, they're all like, we went to this, region in China and we're going to tell you the truth about what's happening in Xinjiang. But in multiple cases, there have been suddenly they come across a state-run media reporter in the middle of a cotton field in Xinjiang, or there's a video where they're like dancing with Uyghurs in the town square, but then you can see another YouTuber, Serpenzetta, showed this in his video, where you can see in the background of these vloggers' videos, they're in each other's shots because it was essentially a state-sponsored tour of the region.
And staged
so that they could get these shots of like these happy dancing people, but you can see them, they're all there at the same time. So it becomes more obvious that it's a state managed tour. But you wouldn't see that necessarily if you were just like watching travel videos. Like you wouldn't understand that was what was going on behind the scenes. But I think it's interesting on YouTube to see that Tibet doesn't have that same treatment. Like Tibet, the term, doesn't have that same treatment. But a few years ago, like the Chinese Communist Party really started concentrating on Xinjiang and trying to flood the search with their videos and like positive videos about the region.
Are you a curious person? Of course you are. We're now putting full interviews only on our new China Uncensored premium website, ChinaUncensored.tv. Your subscription helps support the show and gives you access to tons of amazing content. Click the link below to check it out.